Hey up everybody, welcome back to the Aldo Cycling YouTube channel, where today I'm going to be taking a look at the Velogames Gent Wevelgem. Again, apologies for not doing one for E3, I was ill and there was just a lot of uni work going on, so I decided not to do one. But we're back with Gent Wevelgem, and this is a bit more of a sprinter race, but there's certainly the opportunity for there to be some more attritional racing going on, especially when you take a look at the weather, which shows that on Sunday it's going to be incredibly rainy. It's not going to be very windy, but very rainy, which could certainly lead to more attritional groups going up the road kind of racing, which will certainly influence the selection of your team. So firstly, Wout van Aert, of course, like I just said about the weather, Wout van Aert, if it is going to be a wet and attritional kind of race, he would be the person who's really up at the forefront of this, alongside a lot of his Jumbo Visma teammates. So certainly Wout van Aert is a good choice. He is very expensive, but there are some decent lower point options if you wanted to pick him. De Lee is an interesting one. There's also Caleb Ewan just a little bit further down. I'm not overly keen on either of them, to be honest with you, just because they're both sprinters, so you're not sure who they're going to be going with. They haven't released any kind of press release stating if they're favouring one rider over next. I'd say it would be De Lee, but he was 12 points last year, he's 26 this year. I just don't think he's really worth the price tag yet. I just haven't seen that form, especially considering that he wasn't up there in the front group in Milano San Remo, so I'm just apprehensive about that. Mohoric, I'm not sure what to expect. If a group does go up the road, then he will probably be up there. He was looking good at E3, not the best, but decent enough, considering that the guys who won the race were like the best in the world. I think Mohoric could certainly get in that group, and he's pretty good in wet conditions. So certainly one to be considering putting onto your team. Philipsen, I think, is again must have pretty much, considering that he is arguably the fastest sprinter in the world right now, and without Mathieu van der Poel, he should be the team leader alongside probably Søren Krauw, who will be the more attacking option, but we'll get onto him in a little bit. Philipsen, I think, is definitely going on to my team. I just think that he's so versatile. He can climb really well as well, which means that he's not just a sprinter, but he's a really good one-day racer as well. Asgreen, I won't pick any of the Soudal riders other than really Malia, to be honest with you, just because I think it's going to be a sprint more than likely. Caleb Ewan, I probably won't pick. He's not typically the best in wet conditions, and also there's De Lee, so I wouldn't favour putting Caleb Ewan onto your team. Christoph does go well in wet conditions, we know that for certain, so he's a good choice, as is Pedersen. Of course, we saw how well he does in wet conditions when he won World Champs in 2019, and also Gent Wevelgem when he won that was in wet conditions as well. So Pedersen's a good choice, absolutely, looking pretty good in E3, so certainly building up some good form at the moment. Demar's not a bad one, did okay in Bruges de Pin. I think he finished just outside the top 10, I think. So certainly one to be considering putting onto your team. But if it comes down to a flat out and out sprint, I just don't think that he will be winning. I think he could come top 5 though. Binny hasn't looked that great, to be honest with you, which does make me a bit apprehensive about picking him and his ability to repeat what he did last year. So just bear that in mind. I think that Binny's still an okay choice, but I don't think that he's like one you need to be putting onto your team. Groenewegen, similar to Demar really, does okay in the wet conditions. Again, we saw that at Bruges de Pin, but is he going to make it over those climbs if things start really kicking off? He doesn't really climb that well at all, so I don't really have that much faith in his ability to do well in this race, other than if it is like a pretty chill just sprint pretty much, and things all come back together after the climbing. Kung would be another attacking option to get up the road with, say, like a Mohoric and a Wout van Aert, for example, as would Laporte. Laporte has a weird middle ground right now where he's kind of between Coy and Wout van Aert in terms of his team, so I'm not sure really where he'd fit into your team, basically, because they'd either go for Wout van Aert or Coy, pretty much. So I'm not really sure where Laporte fits into that, so I'm not sure if he's the greatest of options. Stuyven, I think, will be working for the Mads. Then you've got the 3 sprinters for Bora. I don't really like picking riders where there are multiple sprinter leaders, just because I don't know which one we're going to be picking. Ganna's good in the wet, so he could be a good one for an attacking choice. Even Garcia Cortina, after an outstanding 5th place at E3, if he can recover in a day, I think that he could be a great choice, especially since he's a pretty fast sprinter, but he can get into like attacking moves as well, so covers both bases pretty much. The other 20-point riders I'm not that keen for, guys like Greg, Trentin, Sagan, I just don't think they're that great. Ackerman will be the sprinter for UAE. I think that he could come top 10, but he could also get completely spat out the back, to be honest, and just not do anything. Bettiol was okay at E3, but I think that he's building up to Flanders, so I'm not sure about his chances here, especially since he's not the fastest in a sprint. Coy I like just because he will either be the sprinter or he'll get assist points for an attacking Wout van Aert or Laporte or whatever. So he kind of covers both fields as well. Crow will be another attacking option if things start to be really attritional. Sepp was looking pretty good at E3. Willems hasn't looked that great recently, but without Pogačar here, might have a better chance of getting his own result. Fred Wright, not the fastest sprinter and also got dropped at E3, so I'm just not sure about Fred's form at the moment. Perhaps he's just building towards Flanders. 16-point riders. Gaviria's not a bad one. He's looked alright, but there is Ivan Garcia Cortina. Ballerini, Cav, Consoni, Degenkolb. I'm just not a massive fan of either of these. Pollitt did good at E3, so probably worthwhile considering putting him on. I think he finished like 12th or something like that. So more of an attacking option again for Bora, considering the plethora of sprinters that they have. And then the other guys will all just be domestiques pretty much for their respective sprinters and leaders. 14-point riders, Maclay, Mazzato. Mazzato does go well in wet conditions, so certainly could finish top 15, I think would be a realistic goal. Then there's Jonathan Milan, Pasqualon. I'm not sure who they're going to be working for, because if Mohoric isn't feeling it, who's going to be the sprinter? It might be Milan. Sheffield goes well in wet conditions, saw that at Brabant-Sipel, so certainly a good choice there as well. Jake Stewart will probably be a domestique. Rasmus Tiller, will he be working for Christoph? Might get his own chances as well. Turner, good at E3, but I think he's building towards like a Flanders and a Roubaix, considering that he's coming back from illness. He's coming back from injury. 12-point riders, Case Boll could actually be a good one, considering that I expect Cav to be dropped, so therefore Case Boll might survive and do quite a decent result. I could see him finishing top 10 for certain. Well, other 12-point riders, Decker, Stivar, Swift, Gianni Vermeersch, just none of them are that enticing, to be honest with you. 10-point riders, Kelland O'Brien, gets him a break quite a bit. Then there's also Marijn van den Berg would be a good one, considering that he's probably going to be the sprinter for EF. Nathan van Hooijdonk, 11 for E3. Does lightning strike twice in the same place? Not usually, but he has shown some really good form recently, and therefore if you needed a 10-point rider, I think that he's a really safe one alongside Marijn van den Berg. 8-point riders, I think Hugo Page, if Binny's not firing on all cylinders, Hugo could certainly pick up the pieces and do a decent job. Aaron van Pucke usually gets in the breakaways as well. He's done that quite a lot so far this year, so if you want an expensive breakaway rider, then probably pick him. 6-point riders, Askey, not a bad one, to be honest with you. Pretty fast, but there is also Demar, Kung, and Sam Watson in the team, so it's a bit kind of, his chances are getting slimmer and slimmer. Bissiger was a good 6-point rider in E3. I think he was the second best 6-point rider behind Rui Oliveira. Bittner, he did crash in Milano Sanremo, but he is a very fast sprinter. But they also have Degenkolb and also some other guys in the team who could be fast finishers, so I'm not sure about his chances. Owain Doull usually does quite well in these sprinter type classic races. Think back to, he does well in like Omloop generally quite a bit, and that podium finish he had at Kuurne-Brussel-Kuurne. And I just think that he's a pretty safe one to be picking. I think that he could come top 20 if Van den Berg isn't there, or if he's a lead-out man for Van den Berg, he could still finish quite high. You know, there's a lot of guys for assist points, like Krieger and Kirsch for Philipsen and Pedersen respectively. There's also guys for breakaways, guys like from Movistar, like Luis Mas, but also Norsgaard would be good ones. Pedersen, Casper Pedersen, that is, could be decent. If Malia's dropped, then Pedersen might be the sprinter. So it's a bit of a risky one, but certainly worthwhile mentioning. Jonas Ruch finished top 30 at E3, so a decent one there. Gleb Seiditzer, if Case Boll and Cav don't make it, then Gleb would be the sprinter, so a bit of a slim picking there, but certainly worthwhile mentioning. Casper Van Uden is probably my favourite 6-point rider, just because I think is faster than Degenkolb, so therefore they should be sprinting for him. So probably worthwhile putting him on, considering that he is a really good talent, like a really fast sprinter, so I think that he could be a really good one. Sam Watson I'm mentioning because he's from Yorkshire, near me, so therefore he just has to go into everybody's team, to be honest with you. 4-point riders, You're looking at guys to go over breakaway, to be honest with you, or assist points. So you've got guys like Frederick Friesel for the assist points on DeLee or Caleb Ewan. Then there's also Campbell Stewart for the assist points on Groenewegen. But outside of that, you're really just playing a bit of breakaway bingo and hoping that you pick the right person. This is the team I have at the moment, so it's very sprinter heavy, but I might certainly reconsider and go with a more attacking style team. I think that you can either go full sprinter, full attacking, like attritional race, or you can kind of split the difference between the middle. It's difficult to say which way round it's going to be. That's really kind of up to your opinion. But let's go and take a look at the classic squad game. So in the classic squad game, I haven't made any transfers so far, but I am thinking of making one or two. So at the moment I have Philipsen, Pedersen and Olav Koy in there, alongside a lot of 4-point riders for assist points. And I am thinking of maybe taking out Pogačar or Van der Poel and putting in, you know, probably another sprinter like Merlier or something. I could put in Wout, considering that he's going to be doing Ronde van Vlaanderen next weekend, so therefore he will kind of almost save me a transfer and do 2 races for me for the price of 1 transfer. But other than that, I could maybe put on Mohoric. Like I said, Groenewegen, Sønkraug could be a decent one as well to put on, because he'll be doing other races. Merlier, not a bad one as well, considering that if this would just be sort of like a one and done kind of transfer, just get him in. Hopefully he finishes quite high up, but it is quite risky considering that because of the wet conditions, I don't know for certain that it's going to be a sprint, so therefore it could be a bit risky putting on using a whole transfer on a rider which I'm not absolutely certain is going to make it to the finish. So certainly worthwhile thinking about when you're making your transfers. Let me know what kind of things you're thinking of doing in terms of your transfers. How many transfers do you have left? I've got 20, so I'm kind of saving them quite a lot for like the Ardennes and stuff, or like the bigger races like the sprinting things like Scheldeples, for example. This is my women's team. It's the same one as I put in for Blues de Pau, funnily enough, just because I really liked this team, and so long as it kind of is just more of a kind of more controlled race, and also Hentala and Fidanza will be starting, I think that it'll be a decent enough team to be picking. But I might also want to put in somebody like Lotte Kopecky, because we know how well SD Works do in these one-day races. But let me know what you're thinking in the comments section in terms of the Super Classico, the classic squad game, and the transfers you're going to make, and also for the women's race. It's one of the races where there's kind of all 3 available at once. And all that is left to say is to stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Salut!